Hey guys, before we get into the show, I just want to take a quick second to say if you got any value from this episode, please take a second to follow or subscribe on your platform of choice. Feel free to leave a review or a rating and share this episode with someone you believe can also get some value from it. It's one of the best ways to support the podcast. It helps new listeners discover the show, and it keeps the algorithm on our side. If you'd like to support the show directly, you can head over to backtohuman.us. That's where I have all of my links and discount codes for products that I endorse, such as red light therapy devices, water filters, and grounding mats. You can also leave a review or a question to be answered on a future episode, and this is where you will find my ketogenic and carnivore living course, along with an application for one-on-one coaching if you are ready to take ownership of your health and take your health to the next level. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Chill day.
Hi, my name is James Andrella, and you are listening to the Back to Human podcast. On today's episode, I am very excited to talk about a device that I've been using for the previous 4 or so years, and I have noticed significant improvements in my skin health, my cognitive function, and a big change that I've actually noticed is my hair growth. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble, you can see that I have dreadlocks now, and at one point, I didn't think that this would be possible because my hair was really, really thinning. I was really stressed out. And there was a worry that I would honestly start balding. And I'm only 32 years old. So I attribute my regrowth of my hair to dietary changes and also the device that we're about to discuss today. One of my clients actually is in his mid-40s and he gets complimented all the time on his hair, or he gets asked if he had a hair transplant. That's how crazy that this is. That's how effective this device really is. But as you're about to learn the benefits of this device, drumroll, we're talking about red light. Extends way beyond just skin and hair health. So on the show with me today, I have the CEO of Mito Red Light, Scott Chaverri. Scott, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, brother. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
Good enough.
Good enough? Okay. So, Scott, if I read correctly in your bio, you dealt with some health issues, in your childhood. Would you mind sharing your story with me? And how did you start your health journey? And how did you get introduced to red light therapy?
Sure. So, so I was born and raised in New York. I was raised by a single mom. So, child of the 80s. And so modest economic upbringing. And we didn't know back in those days. This is pre-internet, so my mother smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and that was kind of the home environment. We would eat McDonald's, and that would kind of be a treat. When we drank soda pop, and when usually my mother would cook, it would be something fried in Crisco. And so these were kind of the environmental inputs that I was receiving as a child, suboptimal. When I got to being a teenager, trying to compete in sports, I always felt like I had a disadvantage against other kids I was competing with. I also had a television in my bedroom, so my sleep was atrocious. And so these things, obviously, with hindsight, we knew we know now are suboptimal in terms of health and wellness, and but I felt them viscerally, and I always felt like I was tired, struggled for energy, running in quicksand, trying to keep up with schoolwork and my athletic endeavors, etc. And also had really, really bad skin. So teenage acne is a thing, but when you're also eating inflammatory foods, sugar, it just adds fuel to the fire. And so that led me down the path of trying to find solutions. Again, pre-internet, talking to different doctors, different dermatologists, trying to figure that stuff out. And then as I went to college and kind of went out into the working world, I was just not a healthy person. My entire 20s were very unhealthy. Too much drinking, too much caffeine, really poor sleep. All of these things very interrelated, right? If I'm not sleeping well, I'm getting up, I'm powering through the day with caffeine. I'm not performing well at work. So then I'm drinking to relax from the caffeine through the day. And then also just because I'm not in a good place emotionally or psychologically, because I'm struggling to get through the day. I'm struggling to perform at work. I don't feel like I'm achieving the way that I should or could. And so you kind of get what can be kind of a downward spiral of just self-medication, drinking, poor sleep, caffeine, on and on it goes. And that, unfortunately, was pretty much my entire 20s until just excess alcohol consumption and just poor dietary habits. And just one day I woke up and I decided I had enough, my late 20s, and just, another bad drinking episode, and just decided that I had to make a change. And I really just, first I stopped or really dialed back on the excess drinking and pivoted to exercise to fill the gap, which I think is which was in hindsight was a great decision on my part, because it does a lot of the things that I was asking the drinking to do for me, which is alleviate anxiety, help me to sleep better, etc. But in a way that actually served me rather than a way that was tearing me down. And then I just started to feel better, have more energy, and then really kind of rolled up my sleeves to think about what other things I needed to change in my life to kind of keep the upward trajectory going. And the next big thing for me was sleep. So I had really bad insomnia into my early 30s, and what I finally figured out was that the lighting environment that I was exposing myself to after sunset was causing the big problem. It's really amazing to me. I bought a pair of like $8 laser glasses, these red laser glasses, that UVEX on Amazon. Like, this is years ago, and I just started sleeping so much better just from wearing them, and I just couldn't believe it. Because when you struggle with something for years and years and years, and you tell yourself stories about it. I told myself I was just that type of person. I just had a hyperactive mind. You tell yourself stories to make sense of what you're going through. And clearly the story that I was telling myself was not the right story. It wasn't the true story. The true story was that I was exposing myself to garbage light after sunset. And I'm the type of person where if I allow that to persist too late in the evening, then that's it. I can't fall asleep. And so that led me down the path of thinking more about light and how light impacts our physiology. And now I want to fast forward to, and then led me down this whole path of quote unquote biohacking, which I would say I've quote unquote been learning about that for at least 10 to 15 years. So in 2016, 2017, I learned about red light therapy, and I purchased the device, started using it, and then I noticed I was sleeping even better, and I just felt better. I had better mood. So I kind of got hooked on it, and I had moved to Arizona in 2013 to get more sun anyway. So I was really all about sunshine and light. And so I wanted more, and I went back into the market to buy some more red light in 2018, and I got sticker shock about how expensive the devices were back then, and that led me down the path of starting the company.
I think your story resonates with a lot of people, man. Because I personally went down like a similar route. I was addicted to caffeine. I honestly just kind of got off of it. I had poor nights of sleep, insomnia, and I thought I was just killing it. I thought I was crushing it. I thought I was a high performer until I wasn't, until I kind of crashed, and I had to pull myself out of that hole too. And I actually just purchased a book. It's called The 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television. And
I'm sure there are many more than 4. Well, that's good that the person narrows it down to 4. But yes, I'm sure. Well, I'm assuming one of them has to do with disrupting your sleep.
Absolutely.
And not only just the light, but also perhaps some of the things that you might be watching aren't the best things to be watching right before you're settling down at night. So even like psychologically or emotionally, how you can get amped up by watching certain things.
Yeah, like I've read that right before you go to sleep is when you're the most vulnerable to like imprinting. Like that's when your subconscious is really taking in all the info. So whenever you see the flashing images, which your brain can't keep up with, That's one of the things in the book. It's like the images are so fast that your mind is always chasing it. You can never actually pause, and you have to go into this almost hypnotic state. So it has your full attention, and then whatever subliminals they want to put in the advertisements, like you wonder why people are comfortable with the things like the cigarettes, with the McDonald's, as you had mentioned, which I'm surprised that you felt like you had a disadvantage in sports, because I gotta imagine that everyone else was eating kind of the same junk too.
True. Well, I would say the smoking was probably where I attributed that. I can remember in high school. So my mother did remarry when I was 15, and my stepfather is also a chain smoker, and I remember working. Dating myself here. I remember working at Kmart as a cashier, making a whopping $4.25 an hour, saving my few pennies together so that I could buy smokeless ashtrays for my parents, and an air purifier for my room, so that I could breathe somewhat cleaner air in my home. And because when I was running track or playing tennis, and I just had teammates that, we were training the same. We were going out on the same runs every day, and they were getting faster and faster, and I just was stuck. And so I attributed it to the smoking and my inability to really to really show the improvement that my teammates were. But yes, in those days, I mean, I think the '80s there was such a thing as a jelly bean diet. There was all sorts of crazy fad diets back then.
Yeah, no, I believe it. And at least you were health conscious back then to start taking action.
Yes, I mean, this is the duality of life, right? Like, in many ways, that struggle was a massive blessing to me, because it put me on the path of learning,
Mm-hmm.
and being and looking for and having the agency to find my own solutions. Because I wasn't happy with where I was, so I had to make a decision to find a solution one way or another. And it is a blessing, because that mindset or that attitude has served me, and will continue to serve me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you did this prior to the whole internet era, no?
I did. I remember talking to dermatologists. I mean, one of my where I also have a healthy skepticism for the medical system, and I use the system and emphasize the word system for a reason. Was even just my original experiences with people in white coats as a teenager, um, saying, I know that diet is making my skin worse, but I don't know exactly why, and I want your help in figuring this out. And repeatedly, the dermatologist would tell me that diet has nothing to do with it. And I said, that I don't believe it, and it doesn't resonate with my lived experience, so you're fired. And again, as and this was a difficult thing. I remember getting into heated arguments with my parents about this, because again, I come from very modest economic circumstances. So going to see dermatologists was expensive. Firing dermatologists and finding new ones was expensive. But I just refused to accept what they were telling me, because it just didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is before I had the benefit of the internet. It was just my own, again, my gut, my own lived experience said that they were wrong, and I was going to find somebody that understood what I was trying to convey to them and help me, find a solution. So I fired many dermatologists as a 16 and 17-year-old kid.
Yeah. You were blessed with intuition, and you trusted it. The previous episode that I just did was a little bit about medical gaslighting, and I don't think it's like intentional, but unfortunately, the education that physicians, dermatologists, whatever may be provided throughout school, you're correct. It's a system. And just how you said it was expensive back then, it's still expensive now, and people don't really realize that. That's why I love devices such as this, if you want to call it biohacking, or if you want to just get into like junk lighting. And going back to the book that I mentioned, The Four Arguments for Eliminating Television, how you slept with one in your room, one of the biggest things that I recommend people do, and something that I did, I don't even own a television anymore, actually. So if I do want to watch something, I make it a mission. So I'll have to put up like a projector, and it's just not comfortable. So
Right.
what they mention is that we spend all of our time indoors now. I think that I read recently was 93%. And that's probably like a conservative estimate of how much time that we are spending indoors. And when we got away from sunlight, we had to adopt a surrogate, which became these LED bulbs or the television. So we have this junk lighting and we have all these health issues, and people don't realize that we're kind of doing everything, not only ass backwards, but we've adopted these behaviors that really do not support the human body. And we can't figure out where these diseases coming from. And we can't make claims, obviously, for this, but it's like, I believe that if we do get back to nature, we won't experience 90% or more of the common illnesses and diseases that we currently experience as a society.
Well, I agree 100% with you. Absolutely. I mean, that's what my experience teaches me. That's what all of my reading and research over the years teaches me. I remember I studied psychology in Cornell, and again, this is in the mid 90s, and evolutionary psychology. I really had this kind of aha moment that I just said to myself in the middle of that class one day, like, oh, all mental illness, the origin of mental illness, if I had to boil it down into a sentence, is, in generally speaking, because obviously every unique situation, every situation is different, but just a disconnect between the environment we evolved in and the environment we live in now. And that disconnect, I mean, it takes many forms. Whether it's the diet, the air we breathe, the light we're exposed to, even our relationships and and our sense of community. It's very, very different from the environment that we evolved in. And I really feel that now I've expanded that to say mental and physical, well-being or lack of well-being. If you really drill down, you'll find the key drivers of being a massive disconnect between the environment that we evolved in and the environment we live in now.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, I would say even a spiritual component to that too, where like your soul, that's what I like to refer to it as, like your soul knows that it's not living in alignment with the way that we should be. So it's internal, it's trying to scream out at you in all these different ways, like do something different.
Yes.
Literally, just go outside, go put your bare feet on the ground, go do something that is going to support how we are supposed to live. And it shows up as, in my opinion, as you said, like the mental health cases, the mental health issues, the depression, the anxiety. It's like, but
I completely agree with that. And I part of all these things are interrelated. So my mental, and again, in my 20s, I had poor physical health, poor mental health, drinking. But all part of why I was drinking the way I was is I was experiencing that. I was disillusioned with the life I was living. My soul was yelling at me, do something different. I didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So I just really tried to mute my soul, by drinking. And so yes, I completely agree with you. So, part of being a healthy, productive, successful human being is getting better alignment between, and finding a sense of purpose in, this crazy world that we live in.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy that we just can't pick up on that like sooner, how we have to crash in order to really figure out what it is when it's staring us right in the face. If we just look and open our eyes and look at the bigger picture instead of the small picture, which I consider would be the laptops, the tablets, television, then it's pretty obvious. So you came across the red light and you stated that it helped with your sleep. So how would you say that it helped improve your sleep even more? Was this like resetting your circadian rhythm? And what is it about the red light as opposed to things like blue light that we would see in television that just makes things better overall? And that's a broad question.
It is. And can I show a picture or two pictures? Because I think this will help for those that can see the image, and I'll do my best to show this. Can you see that screen there? It says yes. Solar spectrum.
Yes.
So this is very much, let me go to slideshow so it's bigger. This is a quick presentation. It's about me. We can talk to those things. Okay. So very quickly. So this is a graph of the light we get from the sun, or pictorial of the light we get from the sun. Most people are familiar with ultraviolet light. They know that UV You probably know that UV can cause photoaging. It's been associated with skin cancer. They probably also know that UVB light is what is needed in order to synthesize vitamin D in the skin. So most folks are aware of ultraviolet light and its relationship to vitamin D and also skin cancer. But it turns out only 7% of the light we get from the sun is ultraviolet. 39% of the light we get from the sun is visible light. So that's the high school biology, Roy G. Biv, violet all the way up to red, what we can actually see with our eyes. And that spans anywhere from 400 nanometers to roughly 700 to 760 nanometers. That's the top end of red light. And so 54%, or more than half, of the energy from the sun is actually infrared. And so that's made up of near, mid, and far infrared. Our lights use near infrared, the very low end of near infrared. And near infrared is very important for human physiology. And near infrared, we are exposed anytime that the sun is out. We are exposed to near infrared. So anytime it's above the horizon, or to infrared radiation. So anytime the sun is above the horizon, we're getting infrared. So all day long, whenever the sun is out, we are getting exposed to that. Whereas ultraviolet, you might get minimal ultraviolet, especially early morning. There's hardly any. And certainly there's not enough to make vitamin D. Usually it's midday, depending on your latitude, that you're getting enough UVB in order to synthesize vitamin D. And that's, of course, is why vitamin D levels drop in the winter, as in northern latitudes, you're just not getting enough to make any vitamin D at any point in the day. So this is an important thing to internalize. And then we're going to, as is this next slide, which is very important to understand, and it's going to dovetail with the sleep conversation. I promise I'll get back to sleep. Okay. So this is a graphical representation of how modern human exposure has changed over the past 200 years or so to near-infrared light and also visible light. So you can see pre-industrial revolution over on the left here, in 1800, and pretty much hundreds of thousands of years and millions of years before, we were outside all day long. We were getting near-infrared light all day long. And then and we discovered fire, I guess around 300,000 years or thereabouts is our best guess when we discovered fire. And we were building campfires at night. What is a campfire? Red and near-infrared light. So all day long, you're getting near-infrared light. And then when we discovered fire, we're building fires, we're staying warm, we're getting infrared radiation from the fire. Now, that's up until 1800, and we have industrial revolution. We start factories, office spaces. We're moving indoors more and more, like you mentioned earlier. You've moved forward to 1950. You see the massive drop already just from 1800 to 1950 in near-infrared exposure. We're out, instead of being outside half the time, we're outside about 25% of the time. We still had incandescent light bulbs back then, which are actually a source of infrared radiation. The incandescent bulbs create light through something that's called black body radiation, just like the sun. So it heats up a filament, and you actually do get a little bit of infrared exposure from that. But then you fast forward to 1990, and again, we're dropping. Near-infrared exposure is dropping. Now we've got fluorescent lights coming in, and we've got windows, and we're only spending 15% of our time outdoors. So again, more drop-off. And then you fast forward to present day. Now we've got LEDs, like you mentioned, but not the LEDs that are in our lights. LEDs for ambient lighting, which typically peak at green light, because green light is what humans perceive as the brightest. So we're making all of these energy efficient LEDs, and they're designed for energy efficiency. They're designed to maximize our perception of brightness. They're not designed with our health in mind, or at least not yet. So LEDs are an amazing innovation in terms of energy efficiency and making light, but the current status quo of ambient LED lighting is super suboptimal for human beings. Mm-hmm. And then you've got fluorescence. We've phased out incandescents. I mean, in the U.S., they've essentially been made illegal. And we use low E glass now in office buildings, which is filtering out the infrared that would be coming in, again, in the name of energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice that these low E glasses they usually have a slight green tint to them, which is an important little tidbit, which we could talk about later. And we're only spending about 7% of our time outdoors now. It's like you mentioned, 93% of our time indoors. It's estimated 86% of the time in buildings, and the rest, on average, 7% we're in some sort of motor vehicle. So there's a massive, massive drop off in near infrared exposure just in the past 200 years. Massive disconnect from the environment that we evolved to live in and thrive in. And so how does this relate to sleep? Well, it turns out there's emerging papers that are coming out which are saying that actually when near infrared hits the mitochondria, it creates oxidative stress. Sounds like a bad thing. In the right doses, it's actually a good thing because you create oxidative stress, but then the cells create melatonin. So what a lot of people don't realize, I mean, if they're familiar with the melatonin story in sleep, it's that there are actually two different distinct types of melatonin production. There's dim light onset melatonin production, and this is what comes from the pineal gland. It gets dark. Hopefully, you're putting your blue blockers on if you do own a television, or you're going to be in front of the computer screen, or if you're going to open the refrigerator, and so you're safeguarding your circadian rhythm, and that dim light onset melatonin can be produced by the pineal gland. But it turns out that it's estimated that as much as 95% of melatonin is actually made in the cells when they are exposed to near-infrared radiation. So this is fascinating to think about because what it means is that if you actually want to sleep better, you should go outside during the day. And we've all all of us have experienced this in some way. I know that when I spend more time outside, I sleep so much better. And this has to be a big piece of it. So the hypothesis is that you're making 95% of the melatonin during the day when you're exposed to near-infrared light from the sun all day long, and you're building up this massive reservoir of melatonin within the body. So then, when the pineal gland, the dim light onset melatonin from the pineal gland, when that is triggered, all of that melatonin it's surplus, it's spared, it's there to help you just get to sleep and fall asleep and stay asleep and have better sleep. And it doesn't need to go put out fires or oxidative stress fires throughout the body because you've been making that melatonin all day long. And so we've gotten way away from that, where we're inside all day. We're not getting any of this near infrared light, which triggers this oxidative stress, which triggers the production of melatonin, which is a powerful antioxidant to put out the oxidative stress. So we're massively deficient. I think the key takeaway for this is if you just look at this graph and you just look at that near infrared red bar chart and how massively it has decreased over the past 200 or so years, this to me tells the story. We are mal-illuminated. We are deficient in beneficial near-infrared light. And so I think that this is the biggest reason, actually, that people see benefit from using our lights, is they're somewhat offsetting a deficiency.
It's like the slide that you showed before this one. It's all the blue, green, and the UV. We're on the left side, and people aren't even getting exposed to the other half entirely.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, most people are they're just right of UV because they're probably not getting out midday to get any UV, but they're left of orange. I mean, they're getting a very tiny slice of this solar spectrum every day in and day out, every day. And then you've got vitamin D deficiency, which to me, I don't call it vitamin D deficiency. I call it sunlight deficiency because low vitamin D level to me is a proxy. It's just your body's telling you you're not getting enough sun at the right time of day, the right wavelengths of the sun at the right time of day. But then also part and parcel with that, if you're sunlight deficient, you're definitely deficient in near infrared because, again, 54% of the light is infrared. And on balance, it's even, if you think about it, like I think about it from a relative perspective, we are exposed to near infrared light. There's two things. Well, there's three layers to this that I'll restate just to really hammer home the point. One, 54% of the light from the sun is infrared. Two, near infrared is longer wavelength, so we are exposed to it all day long. if you're outside. And 3, because it penetrates deeper into the body, more cells are actually impacted by it. So to me, it is the story when it comes to the fact that we're not getting enough sun. And the UVB and the vitamin D stuff, that's kind of like a side story, right? Like that, it's a small part of the spectrum. We're only exposed to it a few hours of the day, even a few times of the year. Like that's a kind of a side story. The real story is that we are super deficient in near infrared, and we should be outside getting it all day long, and it should be acting on many more of our cells because it penetrates deeper into the body, whereas UV only acts on the skin. And further to that, children, I think, are even more disproportionately negatively impacted because their bodies are smaller. So relatively speaking, like if you and I were grown men, we go out into the sun, maybe the near infrared is acting on, I'm just going to throw out a number, 50% of our cells, because we've got mass. I don't know how much is really going to get deep into the organs. Let's say how much is going to get to my liver, especially if I'm carrying a spare tire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my little 2-year-old daughter, she's tiny. Pretty much all of her cells are going to be impacted by near infrared and infrared radiation because she's physically smaller. There's less for the light to go through. And so in my mind, she's disproportionately negatively impacted by our modern lifestyles because of that.
That's why kids are getting like sicker and sicker too, like all these random diseases. And I didn't know that about the melatonin, that the near infrared actually produces 95% of it. So I'm curious because I have the blue blockers and I'm kind of neurotic about my lighting. So I have the incandescents and I have, I hope they work. I have these bulbs made by a company called Sunlight and they're like amber. So instead of getting like the blue or the greens, the LEDs, at nighttime, I put those on instead. It's a little difficult to see, but I feel like I get better sleep. And so I'm curious, if someone was to stay inside all day and they're still working in the office and they're not getting outside, they're not getting this natural buildup of melatonin, they're just relying on their pineal gland. They do, however, throw on the blue blockers. Is there any benefit to that? But they still need to get outside.
Yeah, so I would say, well, certainly for me, the blue blockers were a game changer, and especially in terms of just getting to sleep, right? Again, like the way I describe it, at least my lived experience is that I need momentum to fall asleep, and like I'm kind of going down. I don't know, like I'm sliding down a hill, and I got to get to the bottom, and so if I get exposed to bright light, I lose momentum. It's almost like somebody and then I'm not going to make it to the bottom of the hill, or I just never make it. So maybe the better analogy is getting to the top of the hill. You need a running start to get to the hill, and if somebody stops you, you're screwed. You're not going to get to the top of the hill. So I think in terms of sleep onset, obviously for me, the blue blockers were a game changer because I'm keeping that momentum, which is the daily cycle of the day. The sun sets, and your body knows what to do. It knows sleep is coming in a couple of hours, so it starts to release the melatonin. You start to get tired. Hopefully, you're doing other things to start to settle down, like we were talking about earlier. I don't know if it's the best idea to be watching, a violent movie like right before you're going to be going to sleep, like action-packed movie of people, killing each other. I don't think it's personally a good idea because you really want to start settling down. You really want to start getting into that rest and digest mindset as you start to hibernate for the day, right? Now, but the point is that process will be facilitated and be easier if you're getting a good amount of near infrared radiation during the day and you're building this reservoir of melatonin throughout the body. Because if you're not, and you're still creating oxidative stress, you're still eating, you're still making energy, you're creating ATP, you're creating oxidative stress within the body. Your body has to handle that. Now, and the idea is that if all the melatonin, or you're creating a disproportionate amount of the melatonin from the pineal gland, that melatonin has to go put out fires with the body and is not free to help you kind of fall asleep as you should. So, first of all, the blue blockers to me are a no-brainer. I really think that really good sleep actually probably starts with first thing in the morning, getting out and getting sunlight first thing in the morning, telling your body, hey, it's morning, rebooting your circadian clock, getting infrared, a good amount of infrared during the day, and then throwing the blue blockers on at night. I mean, to me, that's the recipe of a wonderful night's sleep.
No, I agree, especially in today's society. Yeah. And since we talked about the TVs earlier, I actually thought about this, where it's almost like they show you in the movies what's actually happening in real life. Like it's a little bit of a glimpse, and this may not make the cut, but I remember when I had my awakening moment, and I remember I was in a grocery store, I was in the checkout aisle, and I saw what was in my cart. I was health conscious at the time. I wasn't as eating as good quality as I am now, but when I saw what was in other people's carts, and then I looked at their skin, it almost looked like they had this gray aura. So I'm like, it's almost like we have the Walking Dead among us. It's like people are zombified. They can't see us. So people may be offended by hearing that, but it's something that I saw and I was like, oh, crap. And then another, I guess, famous movie would be like Dracula. So we're almost like vampires now, where we're afraid of the sun.
Yes.
Afraid of the sun.
It's interesting. Well, I think it's certainly true that, our culture echoes in the entertainment that's produced.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think that that's part of what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But also, some of these stories and these mythologies, there might be like some hidden wisdom in there if you really kind of peel back the onion on them, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I should say peel back the garlic bulb.
Mm-hmm.
with the Dracula reference.
There you go.
But
okay, so sunlight provides infrared, and pretty much that whole other side of the spectrum that we saw on the graph. Your red light near infrared light provides certain wavelengths. I believe it's 630, 660, 830, and 850, if I had that correct. Yeah.
That's pretty good memory. Good memory.
Yeah. So how does that compare to sunlight? So we're closer with the red light if we're dosing properly, because I understand that you do have to be relatively close to it.
Yep.
And I guess this would be hard to even compare, but how does it compare to sunlight?
I can. So it's a great question. So again, to go back to the solar spectrum,
we're balanced.
It is a very it's a very, very narrow band actually of the so if you look at this graph here, it's a very, very narrow band, but it's very purposeful. So essentially, so if you just to go through the wavelengths again, so ultraviolet light goes up to 400 nanometers. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter, and so we talk about light within wavelengths. And so the 400 nanometers is the wavelength of the light, and then red light is between 600 and 700 nanometers. So that's why our lights use mid 600s, low to mid 600s, so like you said, 630 and 660. Near infrared is actually invisible to the naked eye. That's 700 up to actually 10,000 nanometers. Infrared is 700 up to 10,000 nanometers, but near infrared is 700 up to roughly 1,400 nanometers. And so our lights use between 8 and 900 nanometers. And there's really two reasons why we do that. One is that most of the scientific research that shows benefit happens to be in the near infrared range between 8 and 900 nanometers, and between 6 and 700 nanometers for red. It's interesting that there's a dearth of beneficial or research showing benefit between 7 and 800 nanometers. That's actually kind of a mystery. And I don't know why that is, but that's just the reality. So there's a lot of good research, 6 to 700 nanometers, a lot of good research, 8 to 900 nanometers. So in science, the optimal part of the what is called the optical window is between 6 and 900 nanometers. So this is it's a very narrow slice of what you're getting from the sun, but it's super safe because and there's two elements to this. Below 600 nanometers, you get this shorter wavelength light, shorter wavelength, higher energy light, doesn't penetrate that deep into the body. So you'll find applications for these different wavelengths of light, like blue light is used for like skin because it only acts on the skin. So there's some acne and some inflammatory skin diseases where blue light's used clinically. Jaundice is another one. That's blue-green light, like 450 to 470 nanometers is like blue-green, kind of turquoise. That's used for jaundice. That's been used clinically for a long time for neonatal jaundice. And that's, again, acts in the skin. It's accumulation of bile, which can be very dangerous for newborns. And actually, I had that issue with my daughter. Was very close to having to go into the hospital for a couple of days to get the box. Luckily, I'm in the light business and I know a little bit about this, so I actually, was giving her some of those wavelengths of light at home, and we were able to prevent her from going into the hospital. And then there's green light's another one that's interesting. There's some interesting research on green light and migraines, and that's actually the light going. It has to go through the eyes, and there certain wavelengths of green of showing potential benefit for helping people with migraines. So that's actually pretty fascinating. But that's going through the eyes. It's not really penetrating deep in the body and acting on the cells in the mitochondria. So and that really starts to happen. That penetration into the body really starts to happen above 600 nanometers. And the reason is that there are chromophores or light absorbing molecules that absorb light below 600 nanometers, like melanin and hemoglobin. And so if light below 600 nanometers doesn't penetrate into the body because it's getting absorbed by these other chromophores. And similarly, above 900 or 1,000 nanometers, you start to get the light starts to get absorbed by the water in your body, and that turns into heat. That is why these saunas use far infrared. And there is such a thing as far infrared sauna, because the far infrared gets absorbed by water in your body and it creates heat. You heat yourself from the inside out, and it's the water is in your body is absorbing those wavelengths, creating heat. So that happens. It happens pretty demonstrably when you get above 1100 nanometers or so. There's a sharp increase in water absorption of the light and a sharp increase in heat. But below that, there's this narrow window. Again, it's called the optical window in biophysics, where you don't get the hemoglobin absorption, you don't get the melanin absorption, you don't get the water absorption. Those wavelengths of light, those photons can penetrate deep on the body, act on the mitochondria, and help the body make energy. So I hope that was a really long answer to your question about how it's different from the sun, but it is the wavelengths from the sun, but it's a very narrow band, but it's very purposeful band of energy that we're using.
So it's the ones that are actually able to penetrate those specific wavelengths.
Yes. And then even more specific, like the reason that we use, it's like I mentioned jaundice earlier. We know what the peak action spectra for bilirubin is. I think it's 465, but don't quote me on that. But that's my recollection. 460. So you want to have the maximum impact on. You use the best wavelength where you know the peak action spectra is. It's very similar for the chromophore within the mitochondria that's responsible for the primary mechanism of action of red and near infrared light, and that's it's called cytochrome C oxidase. We know what the peak action spectra for cytochrome C oxidase are, and there's been four points that have been identified, and they're low 600, mid 600, mid 700, interestingly, and then low 800. Those are the 4 peak points that we get the peak absorption of the light by the cytochrome C oxidase, which again is the chromophore that's responsible for kind of facilitating the beneficial energy effects of these wavelengths of light. And so that's why we use those wavelengths. And you read the article on the MitoPro that we wrote. It wasn't an accident that we chose those wavelengths. It was based on the data, with the exception of 760, which even though that's been identified, this is kind of a mystery. Even though 760 nanometers has been identified as a peak action point for cytochrome C oxidase, there's a lot of times they'll do studies and they won't see benefit. So it's kind of a kind of a mystery. And again, there's a dearth of scientific research between 700 and 800 nanometers using showing benefit. So we leave, generally speaking, you don't find devices that have light in that range. We stay 600 to 700 and 800 to 900.
So the cytochrome C oxidase, that's in the electron transport chain, correct? Just for the audience.
It is. Yes. It's the fourth phase of cellular respiration. And there's a couple of things that happen. I don't know how far down in the biochemistry you want to get. Plus, I'm a little rusty. But one is cytochrome C oxidase needs to bind with oxygen in order to finish making ATP. And part of what happens is, so you have oxygen and nitric oxide kind of bouncing around there, competing for affinity with cytochrome C oxidase. And so part of what happens is when the light hits, it decouples cytochrome C oxidase and nitric oxide. So there's more free-floating cytochrome C oxidase, if you will, to bind with oxygen to finish making ATP. That's part of what happens. Another thing that happens is there's something called a proton pump, which you may have heard of. Maybe you've heard of proton pump inhibitors, which are used for antacid. And so there's basically, if you're inside the mitochondria, it's fascinating to me that the granularity with what we understand about what's going on in a mitochondria, which is so freaking small, right? But there's a mitochondria which is has an outer membrane, and then it has an inner mitochondrial membrane. And so when red and infrared light hit the mitochondria, it pushes protons from the space inside the inner mitochondrial membrane to the space that sits between the inner and outer mitochondrial membranes, right? So now you get this imbalance of protons in that space. And all biological systems are always just looking for homeostasis, right? So you get this imbalance, and so of course it wants balance. So those protons go back across the inner mitochondrial membrane, and when that happens, essentially you create potential energy. This imbalance is essentially potential energy, and so the mitochondria use that energy as part of making ATP and finishing the fourth phase of electron transport. So it's pretty amazing. It's amazing that we know all this stuff, and it's amazing. And it's amazing in terms of the potential benefits that can come from this light, because if you understand this type of light, because if you understand that it works on the level of the mitochondria, then you can understand that it has the potential to benefit any cell that has mitochondria, which is pretty much every cell in your body. I mean, there's a few that don't. I think hemoglobin is one of them, or like your red blood cells are one of them. And I think that's kind of like a design characteristic. You don't want the pizza delivery guy eating the pizza, right? Because on the way to your house, because your red blood cells are designed to carry oxygen, so you wouldn't want them using the oxygen while they're on their way to wherever they need to go, right?
I'm gonna need to re-listen to this one.
Sorry.
No,
sorry.
It gets my brain going. It gets my brain going. So in layman's terms, the red light, when it interacts with, please correct me if I'm wrong, when it interacts with cytochrome C oxidase and also the proton pump, it helps to make a butt ton more ATP, which is considered the energy source of the body, of our body.
Exactly. Exactly right. Yeah, I think key takeaway, it helps the cells make energy. The cells have more energy, they can do their job better, whatever it is their job is. Right?
Especially with kind of what we're hearing now, at least I'm hearing in my realm, is a lot of people suffering from conditions of mitochondrial dysfunction. So getting the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, in order to function better. Ideally, you'll have more energy, get rid of things like fatigue, be able to recover faster, better sleep, better skin, pretty much providing energy everywhere. It seems like we have a lack of energy overall. As you said before, we're mal-illuminated.
Yeah, it's funny, again, I'm not a doctor. My background was in finance, actually, for 17 years. I got an MBA almost 20 years ago. But, I've been reading and paying attention to what's been going on in this space for, I would say, pretty intently for a good 15 years. And I've seen, these kind of buzzwords pop up. There's mitochondrial dysfunction, there's metabolic inflexibility, but it just, I'm also super biased, and I'm seeing things through a near-infrared lens, if you will, these days. But you're right. It all comes back to the mitochondria, and you just kind of have to wonder how much of it is because we are so mal-illuminated. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on food, and I'm not saying that that is necessarily that isn't a contributing factor. It undoubtedly is, whether it's too much sugar or these seed oils, and but I'll let the food gurus of the world kind of opine there. But I think more people need to be talking about light.
I fully agree. That's a big subject of mine that I want to get even better at. So hence why I purchased the book on television, to find out what it's really doing. Because I want to know. I want to dive deep now. I want to know what you know. Because your brain. So how does dosing work with the red light? From what I've read and from what I've been doing, you need to stand within 6 to 12 inches away from it. And I've read many different accounts of using it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Can you get too much red light? And is there any benefit to having it, say, turned on in the room 12 feet away, just to illuminate the room rather than typical LED bulbs? How close do you need to be?
Yeah, so our lights are designed to deliver a certain amount of joules in a reasonable amount of time and do it safely. So rough numbers, most of our devices at the usage distance are putting out 2.5 to 3 joules, and a joule is just a watt per second. So we measure light in watts, light power in watts, and so it's watts per second. But generally, if you do a deep dive into the literature, you find rough guidance of 5 joules to 50 joules for kind of a good dose of red light, red and near-infrared light, and it's not an accident that our lights are designed this way. I mean, we've tested them. We haven't tested in a professional lab. We know exactly the power output, and that equates to about 2 minutes to 20 minutes at about 12 inches. And so, 2 minutes or 5 joules, that might be something like the eyes. There are the eyes obviously is super sensitive to lights. You want to be careful. You don't want to stare into the LEDs. But sometimes I will gently bathe my eyes for a couple of minutes, just with the light off to the side, just a couple of minutes. There's some studies that are showing in children some delayed myopia or improved vision adjustments. There's a really good podcast by Huberman. He talks about this. He did it about a year ago. But 2 minutes. You don't need a lot. It's the eyes; they're sensitive. Shoot. Now, something like an injury, or if you're recovering from like a really, really rough workout, yeah, then maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe get that 50 joule dose. And so those are the general guidelines. And again, it's not an accident that we generally recommend, about 10 minutes, right? We're kind of in the middle of that range in terms of the joules you'll get in 10 minutes. And for just kind of regular maintenance, we think that that's good. Now, the other question is, can you get too much? And the answer is yes. So there is something. It's a biphasic dose response. And too little, you're not really going to do much of anything. But there are diminishing returns if you overdo it, right? And part of that is it's the oxidative stress story. So in biological systems, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So I'm hitting the cells with the light. Mitochondria are getting fired up. They're making more ATP. All that sounds good. But there is more oxidative stress created as a byproduct of that. Now, generally speaking, if it's dosed right and in a reasonable manner, that's a good thing. That oxidative stress creates retrograde signaling to the cells. You increase your melatonin production, like we talked about earlier. You increase your antioxidant and anti-inflammatory signaling, and that's all you get, actually a benefit. But if you just keep doing it too much, then you start to negate the benefits, right? You're creating too much oxidative stress. And the best analogy is like exercise. Exercise is generally considered to be good. Moderate exercise. Go out, you go on a 20-minute walk. I don't think there's anybody that's going to say everyone going on a 20-minute walk every day is going to be bad. Now, if you run a marathon every day, yeah, I don't know. That's probably not the best, right? That's probably, and even if you're well trained, it's probably going to catch up with you. So, it's about dosing it correctly, modestly, and also it's somewhat dependent on where you're at. When I live in Phoenix, so in the wintertime, there's some days where I'm out all day long. I'm really out there, and I'll skip my red light those days. And in the summer, where it's getting hot now, and it's very difficult to be outside, sometimes I'll do it twice a day. I might do it in the morning, 10 minutes, and in the evening, 10 minutes, and I'll get a double dose. So I mix it up personally, but also I'm super acclimated to the light. So I mean, I've been using these lights now for 7 years now. So or lights like this. So I'm super acclimated to it. So whereas if you're not acclimated, we would suggest kind of starting slow, working your way up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what stuck out with me there was you stated where you're at, and you were referring more to location. But what came out for me was, what about if someone is sick and they're using this? Would there be any contraindications? Say, for instance, if someone had cancer, is there any negatives to using it then? Can it help like the cancer spread, or?
Well, I should preface this by saying I'm not a doctor and I can't give medical advice. I will say that we have a very detailed list of contraindications. My job is to encourage people to, and the other issue is that I can't possibly know everybody's specific, unique circumstances. So these types of questions you really need to talk about with an experienced clinician, a licensed medical doctor. With respect to cancer specifically, unfortunately, we don't really have concrete answers there. Like there's not enough data. The data that does exist, a lot of it is, in test tubes or petri dishes, and it kind of gives mixed signals. So if we don't really know. So generally, if we have on our site active cancer as a contraindication, just don't use it. When in doubt, do without. Cancer is a tricky thing. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to figure out net benefits of things, and unfortunately, I know a little bit about this because my son is a cancer survivor. So he, when we were going through treatment, and we worked with a naturopathic oncologist, and we were thinking about some of these other things that could help him deal with treatment. There's always this question, okay, well, could this will benefit his healthy cells? What about, will it benefit his cancer cells? And so you're sitting there thinking about, well, what does the data say will be the net effect of this intervention versus not doing it? So there is something. So the hope would be that there would be a net effect of having the healthy cells and the immune system in particular function better, and then have that be a net benefit of, let's say, doing this if you were ill. But of course, the flip side would be, well, what if it helps the cancer cells proliferate? Then that would be a negative. So so we have it as a contraindication. I am aware of some light being used for certain side effects of treatment, like mucositis. There's good data on that. Mucositis is it's an inflammation of the mucous membranes, typically in the mouth, but pretty much could be the whole digestive tract. That's a pretty common side effect of chemotherapy. So there's good data about it helping relieve that. So that's the type of thing where, again, I would talk to your physician, but I think even the conventional oncologists would agree that if we can do things to help the patient with side effects of treatment, and the unconventional oncologists would say, well, if we can help the side effects, they're more likely to stick to the plan. They're more likely to have a positive outcome. That's a good thing, right? So from a side effects perspective, I'm hopeful that there's going to be some really good research on that, and we hopefully would start to see more kind of complementary use of these types of lights. Again, our lights, they're not. They're just lights. I can tell you the wavelengths and the power data. We don't make any medical claims at all, but I'm hopeful about where the research can head.
Yeah, I'll provide a disclaimer before airing the
Okay.
video, so I'll protect you, brother. I got you. I didn't know that about your son. That's awesome, man. God bless. So there's a contraindication there. What about the reason why I purchased the Mito Red Light, why I went with your company, was the price point. So you mentioned that before, and I don't think that you would have been able to save up enough with your Kmart wage in the past.
No, I'd still be.
And I remember honestly the first light that I purchased, I went with a competitor, and I ended up gifting that to my mother, which she used it and it helped her with cognition. So if we can dive into that one next, if you can touch on that, how it helps brain health. But your lights, from what I found, are very effective, and they're about half the price of the competitors. Meanwhile, you get like double the size. I'm currently using the Mito Mod 300. I'll actually
Oh wow, wow, that's
hold it up for anyone that's viewing.
yeah, that's the 600. Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Okay. Oh
600.
yeah.
Sorry. Got that one wrong. But yeah, I was planning to build out a bigger model once I get into a bigger location. Um, but what about like cheap lights? Say, for instance, if someone's on Amazon and they find this little hairnet thing, are those effective at all?
Well, it's hard for me to make blanket statements. I would say like, yeah, if you,
Or what
I
makes
would say it needs to be, well, it needs to be a certain power density. So probably the best analogy I could say is, like if you're cooking the Thanksgiving turkey, right? Um, you can cook it at 400 degrees for 4 hours. You'll get one result. Let's say a good one. Like that's the thing. You can cook it 800 degrees for 2 hours and get another result, or you can cook it 100 degrees for 16 hours and get a result. And so, um, certainly, either of the latter two examples are not going to be the result you want. You know, in 800 degrees for 2 hours, you're going to get a charcoal briquette. You know, you're way overdoing it. And in 100 degrees for 16 hours, it's not. You're probably not even going to thaw the thing out. So so it needs to be the right intensity and the right duration. And the only way to really know that is to have them professionally tested so that you know, and have them professionally tested at the usage distance, whatever you're recommending, 6 to 12 inches. Having said that, a lot of the products out there are, I mean, the industry's come a long way. So a lot of them are kind of getting better. And I do think something is better than nothing. So if you rely on a super tight budget, I guess, but again, it's hard to make blanket statements, but the ones that are really made in plastic are usually not good. I mean, you have a physical device there. You pick that up. It feels like it's well built, and that's because it is. And so and there's some element of that too. Like these plastic cubes that I see, those aren't going to do much. The power density just isn't there. Generally speaking, you need a focusing lens. And if it doesn't have a focusing lens, because you want to focus the lights against, you're getting the right power onto the body. So it needs to be well made. Having said that, again, like the industry's come a long way, and I think that I think people will get benefit. There's a high probability that if you buy something decent, you'll probably see some kind of benefit. But again, like, ideal state is you buy a light from someplace where it's tested independently. You know exactly what the power output is, and then you can modulate your dosing based on what you're trying to achieve.
Simple. So would you be able to touch on the cognition part? Because I remember when I started to introduce it to my mother, she noticed that she was able to answer questions like much quicker, and she's in her 70s. So for me to hear that, instead of like a decline in brain health, cognition, to hear that just out of nowhere, I didn't even tell her what it would do. Like, that's amazing to me. That made my heart like race and made it jump. So what are the benefits in relation to the brain?
Yeah. So, well, again, if we go back to the kind of like underlying mechanisms acting on the mitochondria, if you think about, on balance, what types of cells are going to benefit from that, it would be cells rich in mitochondria, and that's the muscle cells, that's the heart, these energy, and the brain. I mean, the brain is super energy intensive. I forget what the exact stat is, but the brain is like 2% of your body mass, but it consumes, some enormous amount of the actual calories, right? So because it's constantly, and it's running the show, so it's using up a lot of energy. So on balance, if you can, tip that in the right direction, you should see some benefits. So the other interesting thing about the brain is that it doesn't take, on balance, it doesn't take that much to move the needle because, like if you and I go out in midday sun, let's face it, you got a nice head of hair, got a thick skull. I definitely have a thick skull. And so, and something like only like 1% of the light from the sun actually makes it to the brain. It has to go through our hair, it has to go through our skull. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of the sunlight that actually makes it there, which, but it does get there. But what that infers, or what that means, is that the brain is hypersensitive to light. So if you can get a little bit there, on balance, you can potentially move the needle. So it's really fascinating. I'm actually prototyping a helmet, which we'll use, because we know the wavelengths which penetrate the deepest into the skull. There's been some studies done on cadavers. They study this. 810 nanometers appears to be the wavelength that will get deepest into the skull. So I'm prototyping an 810 nanometer helmet to deliver light to the brain. And I have the textbook over there, photobiomodulation in the brain, that I have to read, because the brain is super complex. There's so much that we're still learning about it. So there's the wavelengths, and then there's also modulating brain waves with certain frequencies of light, which is really fascinating. So that's actually, I'm super excited about that, because I know I'm 47 and I want to do everything I can to maintain high caliber cognition for the next 60 years, so, and so I'm super excited to design it just so I can use it for myself. But if also, of course, obviously, if we can help people, your quality of life is dictated by how well you can think and problem solve and make decisions, right? So, to me, that's the starting point. Sleep and good and clear thinking are really kind of the building blocks of a high quality, purposeful, meaningful life.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah, you like that? So different parts of the body may require different wavelengths of the light, then, I suppose. Isn't there a systemic benefit to red light, though? So say, for instance, if I shine it on my foot, I've heard that it works throughout the body, though. So even if you were to just shine it on your elbow, would that benefit the brain? Could it potentially benefit the brain, or?
Well, so that's an interesting question. So for the first couple of years, I would have told you no. First couple of years of me doing this, I would have said no. You really want to shine it on the area of concern. And I would still say this, if you have a hand injury, shining it on your foot is a suboptimal way to try to help your hand, like shine it on the hand, right? Now, but it's fascinating because there have been studies where they say, we'll shine the light on the lower half of the body, and they see benefits in the upper half. They measure some sort of systemic benefit the upper half. It's actually super fascinating to me, and I don't really have an exact answer for why that is, because I would say, well, you have blood flow to all parts of the body, but as we mentioned earlier, the red blood cells don't have mitochondria, so I don't know that the light is acting directly on the red blood cells. At least, maybe other maybe parts of the immune system, lymphatic system, maybe, right? So I don't know that it's that. There is also this idea that at the end of the day, if you can help a part of the body, you indirectly help the whole. And if you help the whole body, you help any part, because it's all, everything's interconnected. So that may be part of the story. Just from if you think about it from like a resource allocation standpoint, right? Let's say you have you have some sort of injury or some sort of weakened organ, and you're able to your body has to divert resources to try to heal that, to try to make up for the fact that it's not functioning well. And so if you can get that back up to baseline, then your body no longer has to expend those resources. So it's having a systemic effect. Helping that individual organ or body part is having a systemic effect just because you're better able to allocate resources. So so that so anyways, I don't that's a long answer to your question, but generally speaking, like, I would say just try to get it on as much of get it whatever your budget allows, get as big as you can, shine it on as much body as you can, and then go about your day.
All right. So since we're talking about body parts, I know that you have an article. Should you put jewels on your jewel? So I
Yes,
think
the jewels on the crown jewels. Yes, I came up with that one.
yeah, I think the men listening to this should be very interested. So is there any legitimacy to red light? Because I imagine you would want to do red light, not the near infrared, on your genitals, correct? Is there any legitimacy to this improving testosterone in men?
Unfortunately, I think that the claims for that are very, very weak. So there's a couple of things. First of all, there isn't a lot of data to support that. There is anecdotes, and there's I'm aware of one rodent study, and I probably mentioned it in that article. And the rodent study was really cool. They used red light on the rat testes, I think it was, for a week, and they saw a massive increase. So it's super promising. But there's an old saying, 5% of what works in a test tube works in an animal, and 5% of what works in an animal works in a human. So we can't take what is done in an animal and try to transfer it into a human. And the hormonal system, the endocrine system is super complex, and it's very again, it's interdependent. You can't just look at testosterone. You got to look at estrogen. You got to look at all these other hormones, and they need to be in balance. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good reason to think that that it can really move the needle, especially if you're already normal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, if you think about, so if we just take a step back and say, okay, we're going to hypothesize about things or speculate. If it helps, if red and near infrared light help the cells to perform better, if you're already kind of normal in a normal range, then you're already performing okay. Is it really going to push you up higher? I don't think so. We do have two anecdotes from two customers over the years where they were low, and they actually took labs, used the lights for about 6 to 8 weeks, and they got up into normal or even high normal. So, but those are anecdotes, and in 4.5 years of doing this, it's only happened twice. So, but again, both those guys were low. I think one was 300. I think one was in 200s and one was 300, and got up to 5 or 6. I mean, they're promising anecdotes, but again, they were low and they were able to get to normal. And just my own personal experience, I mean, I've been mid 500s for a long time. So I'm 47. Mid 500s is, I think, normal. It's considered normal range, but I'm not rocking 700-800. So and I use the lights pretty regularly now for 7 years. Now, I don't have a contra version of myself that doesn't use the lights. Maybe if I wasn't using them, I'd be 250. I don't know.
True. No, I appreciate the honesty. Just that way I can stop looking like a weirdo.
Well, look, I would say, at the end of the day, you should red and near infrared light, I think, has a place in everyone's life because we're massively deficient. So, having said that, you're going to use the light, shine it on as much of your body as you can, and try to get the benefits systemically, which should include the crown jewels, and maybe you will get a boost. But I'm just saying that the data really doesn't support a lot of the I don't know, some of the chatter that I see.
Cool. No, I appreciate you being as transparent as you can be there. And I do think that we should get like full spectrum everywhere. So I don't think there's a negative to using it there. I mean, when was the last time that a lot of people listening to this had, like, my ass is white?
Right.
just from wearing like shorts and stuff like that. I don't know the last time that anyone's, regions have really seen sunlight. So, and I guess the last thing that I want to leave on, if you don't mind, would be, what about areas where people don't have sunlight available to them really year round? Say, for instance, one of my friends, they come from Michigan, and they're saying that they get maybe, what is it, 20% of sunlight during certain seasons. So would red light help for seasonal depression? Could it?
It may. I'm not. See, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to seasonal depression, just bright light is really good. A lot of, but I don't know that red light specifically has been studied. Typically, sad light is white light, which is all of the colors combined. So there's blue, green, and red, and I mean, well, the whole visible spectrum. But you can make white light with red, green, and blue, just combining those three. So it may. We have some feedback from customers on that. I think at the end of the day, if you're going to do sad specific, I would honestly, I would get both. I would get a white light, but because you need the near infrared. Like the near infrared to me is the bigger story of what we're missing. Even if there isn't clinical data on it helping SAD specifically, again, we're trying to help the whole system. And if you're depression, a lot of times is tied with poor sleep and anxiety. Anxiety and depression are two sides of the same coin. Poor sleep. If you can get near infrared, if you can get more melatonin, you can get better sleep. I got to think that there's something there, and so even if there haven't been specific studies. So I think the bright light box during the day on the desk is fine. But if you can, figure out how to work in some near infrared as well.
And even in those scenarios, the near infrared, there would still be that limit, correct? You wouldn't really want to get more than, I believe it was 50 joules.
Yeah. So from our lights, although I'm looking into more ambient lighting solutions because as I mentioned earlier, these LEDs that are typically, they're great. LED technology is fantastic. It's super energy efficient, and the prices they're becoming more and more affordable. But again, that LED light up above me is primarily green and blue, and it should have some red and even near infrared in it. And so I'm thinking, I have some products where I have kind of sketched out where we add what's missing to even, let's say you're in an office, you're sitting at a desk. Why not put something up behind your screen which gives you a little bit of near infrared and gives you a little bit of red to help counteract or neutralize all the excessive green and blue you're getting, right? But those would be much less powerful because they would be meant to be used for, continuously throughout the day. Whereas the light that you have in front of you is super powerful. That's meant to be used for a therapeutic dose in 10 minutes. Like you wouldn't want to use that all day long. It's way too much. But so designing something which is purposely powered down, that's and also designed to supplement what we're typically exposed to, that needs to happen. And I think it will help people be more productive. It'll help people with eye strain in front of the computer, like things like that. I mean, it will help in so many ways.
I fully agree with you. And I don't think people even consider that they're walking into an office and the light above them could be negatively impacting their health. I hate going to Walmart, but whenever I go in there and I look up, it's awful. I feel...
Oh, the fluorescents are worse too because they flicker. That's another issue. The flickering is like is a very subtle stress, and so yes, but again, the nice thing about LEDs, we can make them without flicker, and again, we can use the solution to LEDs are great, but they bring, first of all, the fluorescents have to go. But even when they switch to LEDs, which they eventually, I think they all will, because they're also better for the environment. I think a lot of those fluorescents have mercury in them and stuff, so they got to go. So we go to LEDs now, but the solution to the problems from LEDs is more LEDs, but just LEDs with different parts of the spectrum, and then we can create a very healthy, natural lighting environment, super energy efficient with LEDs. There just needs to be the will and the commercial kind of momentum to put it in place. But I think it will happen eventually. It's happening in Europe. And I think Europe's way ahead of us on this in terms of really forward thinking like architects and putting in this type of lighting, and so we're just way behind the curve here in the States. My business is small. I'm not like Philips or LG or any of these like giant corporations that can really kind of like do this on a mass scale. But I have some product development things in that I can execute on, which will help one person at a time. So that's the way we'll do it.
That's how it starts, man.
Yeah,
I think you're
exactly.
I really do think you're onto something. So Scott, I want to thank you so much for your time, brother. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your wisdom. I would love to have you back on the show, maybe not just to discuss red light, but it seems like you know a lot about all other light spectrum. So if you wouldn't mind, I would love having you back on. For the audience, how would they be able to find you? Where are you on social media? Where would you prefer people to look for you?
I would say just go to our website, mitoredlight.com. Again, Mito, MITO, short for mitochondria, redlight.com. Our site is, we've really put a lot of effort into the content on the site in the learn section. We've got 6 really good long form articles on kind of the 6 most common use cases for the typical person on red light, which is sleep, skin, hair, muscle recovery, weight loss, and brain health. I think those are the 6. And when we also have tips on, so the sleep article isn't just about red light and sleep. It's about how do you get a good night's sleep, front to back, right? Because we want to educate, we want to help people, because healthy. An army of healthy individuals is an army of people that can go out and make a positive difference on the world. So that's what we're trying to do, is empower people to kind of take control of their health, give them actionable information, and if they want a light, then we're more than we welcome them as a customer.
Awesome. Love it, brother. Sweet. All right. I will include that in the show notes. And again, I want to thank you so much for your time, brother.